Let's talk about the trailer, previewing episode 11 of season 7 of Outlander. As always, I'm a book reader, so if you are looking to avoid spoilers for the show or the books, please do keep on scrolling. So episode 11 is titled 100 Stones, which is actually the name of a chapter at the very end of An Echo in the Bone. It's technically a preview of Written in My Own Heart's Blood, the book after An Echo in the Bone. This means that this episode could very well signal that we are moving into plot that takes place in Written in My Own Heart's Blood and wrapping up a lot of the storylines that take place in An Echo in the Bone. This first shot here, we see Claire still deeply upset and depressed following the news that Jamie has died at sea on his way over from Scotland to America. I had made a comment on my episode review videos that in the books, Claire's internal dialogue is very dark and she has a lot of negative, deep, dark thoughts about Jamie's passing. So I think that this is likely going to be a continuation of us seeing how she is in mourning over Jamie. In this next shot, she is going up the stairs at Lord John's home, and we can see that she is dressed and has her hair done, so presumably she has left the house and is returning. I think this is going to be after the wedding between John and Claire, and she just immediately goes back into that shut down, disassociated state and immediately goes back up to bed following the events of their wedding. We then cut to Rollo, Ian, and Rachel Hunter, and this scene in the books plays out slightly differently, so I'm going to try and explain how they do this in the books because clearly the show is going to handle it a little bit differently here. So in the shot, we see Ian making a cairn or a heaping pile of stones. In the books, we know that this is in the woods between Valley Forge and Philadelphia. This is the scene that is titled 100 Stones in the excerpt from the book. This is a preview chapter of Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and it basically shows Ian dealing with the aftermath of the news that his uncle and his mother have passed. He's looking out at the ground that he's chosen to symbolize his family and where they will be represented by him creating a cairn for them in their honor. In the book, Fergus is actually with him, and he has a lot of internal dialogue talking about how each of the characters related to Jamie and his mother. Most importantly, he points out that Jenny raised Fergus from the age of 10 at Lallybroch and how her loss is very significant to Fergus as well. And he thinks about Rachel and all the things he has to say to her, so she's technically not present when he's building the cairn in the book chapter. He also goes back and forth over whether or not to make two cairns, one for Jamie and one for his mother, and he's dealing with the image of his mother drowning. And we have to remember, he just lost his dad. He had built a cairn for his father at Lallybroch with his brothers prior to leaving Scotland, and now he's getting hit again with the death of his mother. So Ian is mourning at this point in the books. In the book, he decides that Claire should be the one to see this location first, then Fergus, followed by Marsley and the kids, and then he says that Germain is about 10 years old now, so he is old enough to accompany Fergus when Fergus comes along. So there's just a lot of internal dialogue about how they're going to mourn Jamie and Jenny as a family unit at this point in time. At the end of the chapter, he also combines this very Scottish tradition with his Mohawk ones, and he asks that the spirit of the red cedar tree come and keep their presences there at this location that he chose in the woods to honor them. He also has a thought about whether or not he should tell William about Jamie, and him and Rollo, he's kind of thinking out loud, and him and Rollo look at each other and he thinks, better leave that where it may lie. So he does have a thought of whether or not he should tell William about his father at this point too. From there we cut to Bree, who is in the most current timeline in the story. She is at Lallybroch still. I am very curious if they're going to push off the events that will take place with her until the following episode, but if not, then we should be getting a decent amount of screen time with Bree getting a visitor at Lallybroch. I'm curious when they're going to kickstart this. They might prolong it just in terms of lining up Roger's storyline a little bit further before they have the events take place with Bree at Lallybroch. I personally, though, hope they don't wait too long and that it takes place in episode 11, but spoiler, Rob Cameron shows up at the house. We then cut to this shot of Roger. It looks like he and Buck have been camping out on the side of the road on their journey, and I liked how they visually had a similar angle of Bree and then Roger looking out into the vastness of the world without one another to symbolize their separation. This is presumably when he is still out looking for Jenny, and now he is also looking for his father, Jerry, as well. After that, we see Claire laying in bed, crying again. This is, I think, after she climbs up the stairs and collapses in bed, but the shot is purposefully done so that her hand is showcasing the ring on her finger. So again, I think this takes place after the marriage to Lord John Grey. At this point, she is just numb to everything going on around her, and as we'll see in the other shots, Lord John Grey is starting to get to the point where he feels like he has to intervene just to make sure that Claire doesn't just fade away, basically. After that, we see Lord John Grey talking to William and explaining to William that Jamie Fraser was a very dear and close friend of his. William reminds him that Jamie Fraser is a rebel and was a groom at Hellwater, and at this point, William is a grown man, so his argument with his father is kind of toe for toe, and he has very strong opinions now about where he stands in regards to the war, and he doesn't think that his father should be aligning with anyone associated with that cause, particularly with Jamie Fraser, even if it means taking care of Claire, and he has a hard time understanding the rationale behind it, which I find ironic because we just left the scene where he tells Rachel Hunter that he can't imagine a world where the two of them would be enemies, despite her being on the rebel side and him being with the British Army. Essentially, William rejects John's mourning sympathy and admiration for Jamie and doesn't understand why he is mourning for him so deeply. William is still young and figuring out the ways of the war, so I think that this will be an important scene for us as viewers to understand William's headspace and also tee up events in future episodes. After that argument with William, we see Lord John sitting alone in his parlor with a glass of wine in front of the fireplace, which I think was perfect symbolism because we've had so many shots in previous moments with him and Jamie where they sit together and drink in front of the fireplace, and now we see him sitting there alone. So it really highlights how alone he feels without Jamie in the world. I think this will be the scene where we finally get to see the depths of John's grief, and if they follow the book plot, him getting drunk alone downstairs eventually leads for him checking in on Claire afterwards, but I really don't know if they're going to showcase that in episode 11 or have it bleed into episode 12 when he finally goes up to Claire's room. We get this other shot of Lord John and William talking, and it's very clear from the dialogue in this trailer that William is questioning John's character at this point as it pertains to his feelings and relations towards Jamie. He's being very critical of him, and I think in the books we have a better understanding of why, because we've been in William's internal dialogue for so long, which in the show they haven't really highlighted yet, so I hope that this will be the scene where they kind of fill us in on William's views about the war at this present moment. We see William and Buck on horses. These were actually given to them by Dougal Mackenzie because they tell him that they suspect Rob Cameron might have traveled to Edinburgh to get on a ship to go to America, so these are horses provided by him. Here we see Claire getting into a horse and buggy with Lord John Grey. I think this is on their way to their wedding, which is spliced by this shot of a ruby, a gemstone in a box. I think this is probably back in Scotland and has to do with the Roger and his father storyline. I hope. We get this shot of Claire telling someone how her and Jamie chose to build their life in America in that time. And then we see Lord John and Claire standing over this box. It looks like a coffin, but this could be a microscope that Lord John gifts to Claire. After that, we see Claire in this very elegant dress talking to Captain Richardson. This takes place during a ball that she attends with Lord John Grey. William is there. There's a few key moments that take place during this. Then we see this British officer running up the stairs. I think this might be for them coming after either Claire or potentially Mercy. Then we see Claire screaming out into her room. I think this is immediately following the last scene where she agrees to marry John because her hair is styled in the same way. Then we get this little clip of the leaves falling, symbolizing the passing of time. And we end with Claire being embraced by someone on her shoulder. I think this is young Ian given the coat that we see on him, and he's comforting her. Some of these scenes can lead to big moments, so I'm excited for next episode.